Welcome to Chronicles by Candlelight. Subscribing helps the channel grow and lets you stay updated with every new video, so you never miss the content you enjoy. You are listening to Fracture, Episode 9, Blindfolded Monster. My ability was on the fritz, and it began the moment second year's rank number 2 stepped into the ring. It felt like someone stuck 1,000 syringes through my eyes. I shut them tight, drew in a deep breath, and held it until the pain subsided. I exhaled, opened my eyes again, and noticed everyone was staring. "I'm all right," I said quickly, raising a hand slightly. "It must be all this excitement messing with my powers." Jasper studied me with interest. "Do you by chance have ocular abilities?" he asked. "Interesting." "We don't actually know anyone's abilities here," Zuri spoke up. "That's true," Jasper nodded. "I only know Luca's because we came from the same school. I don't know yours, Zuri, or yours, Mia." "That's because we might end up challenging each other," Mia folded her arms and said plainly. "It wouldn't be very smart to show everything now." "I welcome it." Jasper's grin widened. "I would love to fight all my friends." Luca glanced at Jasper. "You're smiling too much," he said flatly. "It's weird." Jasper's face soured like his feelings were hurt. The fight starting. Luca nodded toward the arena and pulled all of our attention back to the ring. The ache in my head had faded, though it felt like I could actually feel my eyes sitting in my skull. Down in the arena, Peter Law attacked. A faint mist curled outward from his body, and within seconds the moisture in the air began to crystallize. Jagged shards of ice formed around him, then he launched them. The ice shot forward in a barrage, slicing through the air toward Zack Champion. Jasper leaned forward. "He is an elemental user. This will no doubt be amazing." People with elemental abilities were believed to be direct descendants of the first families with abilities, which meant we were watching a legacy in action. As for Zack Champion, I couldn't get a read on him. However, one thing was obvious. There was no sense of panic as the shards came flying at him. Right as they were about to hit, another sharp spike of pain shot through my eyes, causing me to squeeze them shut instinctively when the crowd gasped. My eyes snapped open and Peter Law was on his knees. What had I missed? Zack Champion stood a few steps away from him with one hand rested casually behind his back, and the other held his training stick at his side in an almost lazy and mocking way. My mind struggled to catch up. I turned toward the group, ready to ask what happened, but the words died in my throat. Mia and Zuri stared in open awe. Jasper's grin was gone, and all that remained was a steel gaze. Even Luca looked at the arena with an intensity I hadn't seen from him before. It was like they had just witnessed something dangerous. I couldn't believe I missed it. I leaned forward and locked my focus onto the fight, jaw tight as I forced myself to pay attention. I wasn't missing the next exchange. Down below, Peter Law pushed himself up from one knee. Then he started laughing. Cold mist gathered around him again as his power flared, and within seconds the air around his arm condensed into solid ice, forming a long, jagged blade that extended from his grip. Peter blitzed forward with an elemental sword in hand. "Whoa!" The speed caught me off guard. He was faster than Brian Topman had been earlier, and not by a small margin. The gap was clear. The first slash came down in a clean arc that Zack Champion met. His training stick intercepted the blade with a sharp crack. Peter Law slashed a second and the third time. His attacks chained together in a rapid sequence of 6, maybe 7 slashes in total, each one aimed at a different angle to break through Zack's defense. Zack parried every single one. His movements were minimal, as if he didn't waste a single ounce of motion. Each deflection redirected just enough force to keep him safe without overcommitting. The fact he was blindfolded made it all the more unbelievable. Then the 7th strike came, and as Zack's stick met the blade, ice spread across the ground beneath him and raced toward his footing in an attempt to lock him in place. "A trap," I whispered. But before the ice could reach Zack's foot, he lunged forward with some power. The ground beneath him cracked as the force of his step shattered the forming ice and broke it apart before it could fully take hold. In a moment, Zack entered Peter's bubble, his danger zone. He dropped into a low stance and drove his palm forward. The solid impact landed square on Peter's chest and looked like it should have ended the fight, but ice formed at the point of contact and layered over his chest to absorb the force. Still, the blow pushed him back several paces. His boots scraped against the arena floor as he slid before regaining balance. Then something strange happened. Peter's body jerked forward suddenly, like he had been pulled. Zack hadn't touched him. Zack stepped in again and unleashed a flurry of strikes with his training sticks. Each hit targeted a different part of Peter's guard, forcing him to react again and again in rapid succession. Peter's defense held. Ice formed wherever the strikes landed, reinforcing his body almost instinctively. The frozen armor shifted and adapted with each impact as if it had a mind of its own. I blinked, unable to fathom what I saw. What was that? What part? Jasper laughed nervously. They are both monsters. Zack Champion. Does he have telekinesis or something? I asked. Jasper couldn't answer. For once, he had gone completely quiet. That alone told me that this wasn't normal. I don't think he is using an ability. He rubbed his forehead in pure confusion. That's not possible, Mia said. What the hell was it then? Couldn't you sense it? Luca paused as if trying to find the right words. I can't fully explain it, but it is like he's manipulating the space. The space? I blinked. Yeah, Jasper nodded. With spiritual energy. I looked back at Zack Champion, unable to make sense of everything I'd just heard. Spiritual energy? That was the feat Slade Baldwin performed earlier. If I was being honest, I hadn't really understood it back then. And now, was I meant to believe that his spiritual energy was enough to keep him on par with an elemental user? To bend space? Accepting this raised more questions, like why hadn't I passed out when he released that pressure? Down in the arena, Peter Law and Zack Champion clashed again. This time, the exchange was tighter. They traded blows in rapid succession, ice and wood colliding again and again. Peter's elemental ability reacted constantly, forming ice wherever it needed to defend or attack, while Zack moved through it all with that same calm, controlled precision. Zack had the upper hand. That much was obvious. It was almost like he could see the future. My eyes suddenly flared with pain, the pressure building and spreading into my head as if something was trying to force its way through. Then suddenly, for a split second on the arena floor, I saw something. A white aura. It wrapped around Zack Champion's body, and from it thin tendrils stretched outward, reaching toward Peter like searching limbs. Then it vanished. What the hell was that? I froze. Did you guys see that? See what? Jasper asked. I hesitated. Then I shook my head. No, nothing. They hadn't seen it, only I did. Why? Did this have to do with my ability? Was there something about Zack Champion that messed with Fracture? I looked back at the arena. Not knowing what to expect, I activated my ability with the intention of using it to spectate the rest of the fight. But it didn't work. I couldn't see anything. Great, I muttered under my breath. I was sure it had something to do with Fracture. What else could it be? Down below, Peter shifted tactics again, as ice gathered rapidly beside him, forming into a second figure. The construct stood in his image, made entirely of dense, reinforced ice. A clone. Zack discarded his training sticks. Oh, Jasper leaned forward sharply. He's serious now. I can feel it too. Luca nodded slightly. Peter and his clone began to circle Zack from opposite sides. Then they attacked together and rushed in from two angles at once. Peter led with a flurry of straight punches, each one encased in ice. Zack matched him and parried every punch cleanly. Then he stepped inside Peter's guard and drove a palm into his ribs just like he did earlier. Except, it wasn't the same. For a split second, it felt like the space around his hand folded inward toward the strike, like the distance collapsed. Before I could process it, the clone attacked. A spike of ice erupted from the ground at point-blank range and shot upward towards Zack's body. It should have pierced straight through him, but mid-rise it curved slightly off its path and grazed past his shoulder instead of impaling him. There it was again. For just a moment, that white aura flared around Zack. It was too brief to measure the radius it covered, but this time I caught something. The moment the ice entered that space, its direction changed. Peter followed up immediately with a sweeping kick, his leg reinforced with his ability. Zack caught his leg mid-strike. It didn't even look like Zack reached for it. All I saw was one moment his hand was at his side, and the next it was already gripping Peter's leg, the distance between them completely erased. The clone lunged forward with a double-handed thrust aimed straight at Zack's spine. Zack twisted and threw Peter's body into the path of the attack. The ice construct couldn't stop in time, and its strike grazed across Peter's side. Lucky for him, his defense was impeccable. Then I saw something else. Similar to Zack, there was an aura connecting Peter and the clone, like a link running between them. Was he using it to control the clone? I murmured under my breath. But as quickly as the link appeared, it vanished, and I was left back at zero. Peter attacked again. There seemed to be an urgency in his actions. Maybe the ice clone was a last-ditch move like Topman did in the previous match. He raised both hands and pulled sharply downward, dragging the surrounding moisture. Spears of ice formed overhead in rapid succession, dozens of them taking shape in a tight cluster before splitting outward, multiplying until the entire space above the arena looked like a frozen storm waiting to fall. At the same time, his clone mirrored the motion perfectly. Then the barrage came down all at once. Ice tore through the air, each one angled slightly differently to cover escape routes, to box Zack in, to force a hit no matter what direction he moved. The density alone made it look unavoidable, and for a split second even I felt it. That certainty that there was no way out. Then Zack Champion performed another seemingly impossible feat. The moment he moved, the distance around him collapsed. The falling spears distorted as they entered his invisible radius, their trajectories bending just slightly, just enough, as if the paths they were meant to follow no longer existed in the same way. The barrage parted around him in warped, unnatural lines, each spear missing by margins so thin it didn't make sense. My breath caught in my throat. Then, for a brief moment, he was nowhere to be seen. He appeared right between Peter and the clone. I wasn't sure anyone had even seen the movement in between. In one motion, he drove a kick through the clone. Ice exploded outward in fragments as the structure collapsed, instantly. For just a fraction of a second, Peter's body was locked in place as if he hadn't yet caught up to what had just happened. Then Zack followed up with a rapid combination of open palm strikes, each one landing with that same distorted compression at the point of impact. It looked wrong every time his hits connected. Each blow caused Peter's body to fold under the pressure, and when the final hit landed, everything released at once, and Peter exploded backwards like he had been fired from a cannon. It was over. Subscribe for new episodes. See you next time.